your values are really the things that are the filter for your actions and ultimately your beliefs. So my values were, very, very misaligned. And that is why I became burnt out. And I didn't know that when I was going through it. I think everyone around me probably knew I was burnt out, but I didn't. I was just working really hard and put my head down doing my job and couldn't figure out why I couldn't figure it out. I think that was the most, frustrating thing for me is like I had figured it out before and everything I'd done before fixed it, which was take on more responsibility, do more work, but it wasn't fixing it. And, obviously you get to a point where that's not the answer. And it wasn't the answer before. But I think my values were family, relationships, time off, like being able to understand and be creative. Like, because if you don't have any space for yourself, it's hard to think.
Welcome to the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. The House of Germar is a lifestyle brand, empowering women to live all in through interior design and personal wellness. We are a destination for women ready to reimagine what is possible in their homes and lives, and then create it. We are honored to have you join us on our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. I am your host, Jean Collins, and I invite you to become inspired by this week's guest. Welcome to the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. I'm your host, Jean Collins, and today we are talking about being bold. I am so honored to have Leigh Burgess as our guest today. She wrote a book. I loved it, everybody. For those of you that can see, here it is. Be Bold Today. Her journey is really fascinating. Her story is interesting. Her book, amazing. We're going to talk about it. She has another one coming out. And she just has a really interesting approach to how you can manifest and create your own life and design your own life. And she uses the word design as the D in bold. And those of you who follow me know I'm a designer at heart. So Leigh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's great to meet you. Thank you. So we are recording this on a Tuesday, and I will say my landscapers have just arrived, everyone. So my dogs, I guarantee, are going to bark. So just bear with us. This is real life. So Leigh, talk to us about, just at a high level, your journey in life. Because I am sure you didn't start out saying, I want to run this business that you have. You also have your daughter who works for you, your books, your coaching, everything that you're doing. So how did you get to where you are to have the business that you have now?
Yeah, so obviously the journey is a bit long, but I'll try to do my best here just to give you a brief version, overview. So a lot of my career, I was in the corporate setting. So from a career perspective of the journey, went to college, went to school, all that jazz, and ended up in, the place that I wanted to be, which was in corporate healthcare. So a lot of my time I was in large academic institutions in an operations role, which I just, really enjoy being in ops. And got to a point in 2020 where I was burnt out, ran pretty hard at, incredible institutions, but just got to a point where I just kept taking on more responsibility to fix problems. And it just got to a point where I just wore myself out in addition to kind of just an unhealthy place. And I ended up quitting my job without having a plan, which is not recommended, nor what I normally would do on any
I
level.
love that. I love that, though. That is bold. You go.
Yeah, it was bold, but I think I had to choose myself. Really, my health was really on every level had deteriorated, and I gained weight. I wasn't moving. I was reactive. It was the middle of the beginning of the pandemic, whatever the heck you call August of 2020.
Yes.
And I just made the decision with my family that we needed to make a change, and tried all the normal stuff, trying to get a job, but that's a difficult time to do it in general. And really knew that we could figure it out. So I, had to really think about how to do that with a short runway, with a little bit of savings, a little bit of retirement. And my daughter and I co-founded the company. So she's actually co-founder of my company. She had just finished her post-grad program at MIT, and she also was impacted by, the world shutting down. So she's 25 years younger than me, so a great way to also have a different vantage point. So that's how we kicked it off, and I really needed something to follow to know what to do next, and I couldn't find anything, and that's actually how the BOLD framework was created, was just for me to figure out my what's next.
I love that. And your daughter brings the younger generation, no offense to us, but
Right.
she
Yeah,
really does,
definitely.
which is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, definitely a different point of view, a way to look at things, certainly, and also just an incredible person to have, insight into what we're doing as well as, to give me feedback. Because a lot of the times I think I have to do more to accomplish what we want to do, and at times she's very, very straightforward and, to the point and letting me know, like, "No, that's the opposite of what we need to do." It's not always more.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So when you started, was it you wanted to do coaching? You wanted a course, like, or you wanted a book? Like, where were you in terms of, oh, this is, and where I'm getting at this is like, this is my new identity. Like,
Yeah.
where were you going with it? Because as working moms and just as women in general, we tend to define part of our identity by our corporate job and our corporate career and what we do. And so when you make that big transition and that pivot, where were you seeing, your identity as it was going to go with this?
Yeah, I was 48, so I honestly felt like I had lost who I was. I didn't really know. I knew I was a very hard worker, really good at my job. I think there's a myth that when you're in burnout, you're not good at your job, and that's not it. You may not be doing it like at the 100% level, but you're still doing a really good job, but you're just
Of course.
extremely unhealthy. I think one of the things that I wanted to do was actually be able to introduce myself without actually stating who I worked for and what my title was. That's actually something I
Ooh,
do in
I
events.
love that.
Yeah, so, like, please introduce yourself, but don't tell me where you work or tell me your title.
I
And
love
then
that.
and this is like everyone kind of pauses. So I think I had done that. I didn't think that I really felt like my identity was part of that, but I mean, it truly was. I mean, it was a wonderful, there were wonderful places where I worked at Duke and at Dartmouth and very proud of those moments, but I wanted to actually figure out who I was and what my identity was. For a little bit, I didn't even think I'd be going back into healthcare because I was so burnt out and 20 plus years and just kind of, just really worn out. I really want to explore. So we had kind of an idea of just like, don't limit yourself. Let's just see what the possibilities are. We know that we have a
Yeah.
little bit of a runway and let's just get healthy, number one. And so I did take some time off, believe it or not, even though that's a very stressful time. You're like, I got to get a job and I got to be able to do
I
all
need
the
a paycheck.
yeah, but you can't do that if you're, a nub. And so I really, for the first time, took a vacation without a phone. I took time off. I took time to be outside. As silly as that sounds, but when you work in corporate, you're not outside very often, just walking to and from the car. And so I really did take time to do that. And then I explored kind of what would be possible. One of them was events and interior design. Really, I love both of those. One of them was around barbecue sauces and music. We love to grill out, and I'm a big music fan, so we were gonna name sauces and rubs and seasoning after songs. And then there was consulting, which is where I ended up actually starting. So I ended up starting into consulting and creating a model for that actually. The D90, D is designed in 90 days, because that was one of the things that I really felt was a challenge in organizations was just we were doing a lot to get better, but it was taking too long. So I wanted to work
Mm,
very pointedly, and I think I wanted the organizations to radically prioritize what they wanted so that we could get stuff done in 90-day strategic sprints. So I ended up starting off in consulting. Never thought about being a coach, never wanted to have a podcast, never thought about having retreats, a membership, or, you know, every now and then thought about books, but I didn't really know if I, really felt that was the time to be doing that type of thing. So I think I was still figuring it out initially, and I was looking for what I wanted to do and who I was at 48.
ooh, which I love that. I'm listening to you talk, and you and I have such similar
Oh,
paths.
okay.
I did mine at 50.
Okay. That's
So I
the
just did
happiness
mine 2
curve.
years. I
Yeah.
just did mine 2 years after you, and I did it like 8 months before you because I did it starting in January of 2020. And that whole who am I? And
Yeah.
just being so burned out. And I want to just say one thing that you said that I love so much, which is you made the comment that just because you're burned out doesn't mean you're bad at your job.
Mhm.
And I think that is such an important message because I think I know I went through a phase of of questioning whether I really was good at that job, especially because I got fired. I didn't quit. I got fired. And so, but I was just like, you're talking, I'm like, that was me. I was so burned out. I had no idea who I was. I just couldn't get excited about going back. It was killing every part of my life. And I didn't realize it until I was forced to step away.
Right.
And then trying to figure out who I am and where do I want to go. And then my journey, just like yours, similar. If I look back at the last 5 years, I would have never imagined 5 years ago I would be where I am today.
Right.
And same is probably true for you.
Hmm.
And what I find is interesting about that is, coming from a corporate background, we sit down in corporate America and you're like, okay, what's the 1 year plan? What's the 3 year plan? What's the 5 year plan? And you like
Yeah.
plan it all out. But then once you start to get into a different flow and become open to the possibilities that the universe will bring to you, it's hard to come up with a 5 year plan. Like, do you think now 5 years ahead, or are you much more narrow?
I think if I have anything that's a 5 year, it's a general I want to buy. Meaning
Yeah.
that, I want to get to this place. I want to
Yeah.
see this excel, or I want to see this end and this begin in
Yeah.
within 5 years. Like, my
Yeah.
5 year plan, I'd love to have 20 acres. I'd love to be on a farm and be
Yes.
rescuing animals in some shape or form.
You were like my soul sister. Yes.
So like that's like 5 years. I think for me, I think, one, milestone coming up is the end of the year. What do I want to do by the end of this year? And that's really close. And believe it or not, it's, 5 to 6 months away. And then, for me, a year from now, like I think that's reasonable. But getting anything like farther out from that, that is totally planned out to the T is challenging. But I think there are certain things within businesses that you have to do. But it is generally not like the 5 to 10 year plan is how we operate our lives anymore. At least I don't think I can.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
with you. I'm with you. All right. So before we get into your book, I do have a question. You created this process, this method, this bold framework, let's
Mhm.
call it. Right. And you talked about how you started your consulting business and came up with a framework for businesses. How did you deal with the imposter syndrome that I am sure happened of why is anyone going to listen to what I have to say? And maybe you didn't have it, but I feel like all of us as entrepreneurs have had that. And I asked the question because I think a lot of people who are considering becoming entrepreneurs struggle with how do they move forward in that process.
Yeah. I had never been introduced to even being an entrepreneur. It wasn't how I was raised. My parents were entrepreneurs. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. So doing it to me felt, like 5x scary because I really didn't even have anyone to ask. And I think one of the biggest things I had to do was really be fueled by self belief, which is why the B of bold is believe. And I had to believe I could do it. Everyone around me believed I could do it. But it was interesting that I had never felt imposter syndrome until I was an entrepreneur. I honestly never had it in the corporate world. I was always like very to the point, outspoken. I was hired for getting things done. I mean, it was just, I felt very much in my place there. But I felt as an entrepreneur like I didn't know what I was doing. And it was a
Yeah.
very weird thing to be an expert or, a C-suite executive to now I'm running my own company, but I don't feel like I know what I'm doing. So I think how I dealt with it was really just believing and understanding if I had some type of moment where I wasn't believing in myself, what was coming up? Like if, I think for me, there was a sense that I had to do it all, that I had to figure everything out. And that isn't the truth, like in the sense of, sure, you need to know generally what you're doing and what you're about. But I wasn't like I quit and then what do I do? I'm sitting at my desk. I mean, when I gave my notice, I incorporated. So I started the paperwork with the
Yeah.
state. And that to me started to open up. Like, I honestly feel like parts of my brain that had been shut down, the creative side, the thing that think about possibilities. I mentioned the 4 different businesses, but as silly as those may sound to someone else, those are things that I find joy in. And I really the main thing I wanted to do was find my happy place again,
Yeah.
inside
Yeah.
me, not going somewhere because that would be the beach. But I mean,
Yeah.
inside me where I want me to be like, a happy place. And so I was really looking for that. So I think for me, how I dealt with it was really to really do the work when it comes to belief and really ownership, which is the second letter. And for me, I was owning way too much stuff that wasn't mine to own in the first place. And so that's where it all started, I think, belief and ownership.
Yeah. Oh, well, good. I always feel like, at least for myself, it was like, even though it was totally scary and just like you, I had no idea how to be an entrepreneur, no
Yeah,
clue. And there was so much I didn't know. I always used to go back to like tapping inward and being like, okay, but you had all this success in corporate America
right.
and you could do that. You did that. You created that. You manifested that. You worked hard and you created it. So if I work hard now, and I really believe that I have the capacity to create something great, even if I can't even define it or don't know how to do my books or all the other things. It can happen.
I can figure it out.
I can figure it out. I'm
Yeah.
smart. I can figure it out.
Yep.
And one of the other things that I learned was I learned how to ask for help
Mm,
much more so than I think I would have had I been younger. And I always try to say to people as a lesson, like, learn from, us at this age. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of intelligence by
right.
being willing to ask for help with what you don't know how to do.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I think I'm getting better at that, but I also still get ticked off, I think, when I do finally get, like, the gumption up to ask for help, and then someone's like, "Nope." And so it happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. I think it's like 1 in 20 times, right? Most of the
Yeah.
time when you ask, someone will guide, provide, or help you kind of figure it out. I think there's also the side of being an entrepreneur that honestly, I'll just say for me, like, I enjoy not knowing something and going and trying to figure it out. I don't know about you, but like, I don't want someone just to hand me the answers. Like, I want to be like, okay, let me figure this out so it's my path or the way that I would do it. And that's one of the greatest things I think. And, I know every day who's in charge. It's
Yeah.
me. So I
Right.
think yeah, and I'm not using my energy to align with, the normal stuff that happens in any bureaucracy, the politics, somewhat, the relational things that can be off or stressing or, just take energy within any type of organization, which is just normal. But you're using your energy for other things, and part of my energy was figuring it out for sure.
Which I love. And you control your energy, and that's so
Mhm.
important. And you control the energy of the people that are around you, and you can choose who comes into your universe as an entrepreneur, and
Right.
does their energy lift you up, and do they inspire you and challenge you? And I loved how you talk about continual learning, which is the L, right? So you talk
Yep.
about learning. So before we give away the whole book in pieces that people don't understand,
It's hard for me
let
not to talk about it.
no, but I was reading, I was like, oh my goodness, I do all these things. I love this. So let's talk about your book.
Okay.
So let's talk about bold. So if you could, let's go backwards. Let's just explain, what is
Sure.
bold? What does that mean? What are the acronyms? And then we'll start there.
Sure. So a way I've learned my entire life, really, probably from middle school on, was to make everything an acronym, so I remember it. If I'm studying for a test or whatever, it seemed to have worked. So I did the same thing with this, and the reason that I chose the word bold was that I felt like I had made a pretty bold move. Right. I think before then, the only time you ever would hear me say the word bold was with my team. I would say, "We're going to take a big swing of bold here. We're going to, do it anyway, but we're going to learn regardless, right? We're not sure, it's not guaranteed." So for me, BOLD stands for believe, own, learn, design. And it really is a framework that you go through, from beginning to end, at least initially. And then you may go back and revisit certain pieces or parts of it really throughout your entire life, because it isn't like you do it once, check, and then I move on. So your beliefs really do guide your actions, whether you know it or not. It's the foundation of everything. And really digging into that and believing in yourself really is what the B and the B section of the framework are all about. And understanding your beliefs. How do you talk to yourself? How do you set yourself up for success? Are some of those things, like we were just talking about imposter syndrome? Like, I have an activity in the book where you just kind of write down, your thoughts or things that you're saying about yourself. And then it's like, is that really true? Like you were saying, it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not. So like
Yeah.
let's write that in our mind. The ownership piece is really about owning what you should own and letting go of what you should not, which sounds a whole lot easier than it really is in real life. But you've really got to do the work here. And for me, I realized that I was never owning anything positive. I was always owning what was wrong, what was broken, what needed fixed, which is cool because I love to fix things, but it isn't cool when you don't ever celebrate, get happy about, take a
Yeah.
moment and really realize all the things you've accomplished. I just really skipped over that continually. And it was like, yeah, we did it. Okay, what do we need to do next?
Moving
And
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's also how I ran my career was like, what's next? What's the peak? Let me get there. And I would get to it and I'd be like, wow, that one's taller over there. I'm going to go
Yeah.
over there.
Right. Okay. Go over there. Yeah. You
Yeah,
don't take a moment to pause and
right.
reflect on all that you've accomplished and the positives.
Yeah, so that really digs into owning what you should, and I think the other thing that comes along with is, have you been ascribed, meaning to think a certain way, to be at a certain point, a certain type
Yeah.
of expectation by just how you were raised or maybe by your culture or maybe by your parents. Like, my parents, great parents, but I was good to go to school, get a degree, get into corporate, keep my head down, don't make a lot of fussly, which was, usually what my dad would tell me every Sunday dinner, keep your head down, and that's just not me. But he knows me.
I was
Yeah,
going to
and
say,
he
I've known you for all of 25 minutes, and I would say
exactly.
that does not sound like you at all.
Right, yeah, and then retire, and then live your life, and I was like, "Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me," right? We're
Right.
supposed to be living while we're doing it. So, you may have things that also, maybe someone's fearful of something, or maybe that they would never do it, so they've told you never to do it. So these are things that really have been ascribed, meaning you didn't subscribe to those types of beliefs, they've been given to you. And I had to
Yeah.
work through those too, about just even being an entrepreneur, not being in corporate. I think the other thing that's just important to realize is not everyone's gonna understand what you're doing, and
Ooh,
that may
I
hurt a
like that.
little, when it comes to your friends or your colleagues or people you thought you had something in common with, and you're like, "Whoa, like, we only had whatever," like, maybe the strife or maybe we didn't, get along with a certain person or we worked on a project, like, that's the only thing we had in common, because once you leave that place, which was a big piece of your identity, and someone doesn't know you anymore, then that means they really didn't know you, right? So that's a big piece of the ownership too, I think, in there, and then the learning is really about applying that growth mindset on a continual basis of, the PDSA cycle on loop. Like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Let's figure it out. Let's get some data. Let's keep going. Because, I think my definition of being bold is really feeling the fear and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's just really important for people to understand. Fear is not a stop sign, it's a signal something's very important. And I think that's one thing that I continue to learn through the process and every day, honestly, as an entrepreneur. And D is designed, and that really came from, me wanting to design my life, design my blueprint of what's my next step and my path, and realizing that I didn't have to have 500 steps figured out. I just needed the next 10. And that's where we get into these like, if I don't have it all figured out by, you know, equals I'm a failure or equals I don't know what I'm doing. And I think designing your life really is sometimes step by step.
Couldn't agree more, which is so important. And you talk in your book about beliefs versus values, which I
Hmm.
thought was really fascinating. And you have exercises in your book as well. Can you
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about the difference between a belief and a value?
Yeah. So belief is really, obviously what you think and how you approach a particular, whether it's a subject or even how you think about yourself. Like, I am strong, I am smart, I am intelligent, I can figure it out. Those are things that are your beliefs. Or I believe people should be honest, right? I believe that, I should walk around the block today and be healthy. Those are the types of things when it comes to your beliefs. Your values are really the things that are the filter for your actions and ultimately your beliefs. So my values were, very, very misaligned. And
Yeah.
that is why I became burnt out. And I didn't know that when I was going through it. I think everyone around me probably knew I was burnt out, but I didn't. I was just working really hard and put my head down doing my job and couldn't
Yes.
figure out why I couldn't figure it out. I think that was the most, frustrating thing for me is like I had figured it out before and everything I'd done before fixed it, which was
Yeah.
take on more responsibility, do more work, but it wasn't fixing it. And,
It wasn't
obviously you get
fixing.
to a point where that's not the answer. And it wasn't the answer before. But I think my values were family, relationships, time off, like being able to understand and be creative. Like, because if you don't have any space for yourself, it's hard to think. Believe it or
Yeah.
not, that sounds really silly, but I think in the sense of like being creative and being strategic, like strategy was like, on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, instead of actually really being able to think through like, what do I want to be doing? Where am I? And how am I going to like live my life? and do the things that I want to do the way that I want to do them. And there was just really no time to think about that when I was in corporate because it was just go, 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 go. And on certain times, yeah, the adrenaline kicks in and that feels really good. But I think ultimately being misaligned with your values and having beliefs that aren't supporting what you want to do
Yeah.
ultimately can just put you in a place where you need a reset or you need to rethink kind of what you're doing.
Yeah. Which I love. And so you talked about something which will transition to something else that I really loved in your book. So, first of all, for anyone who hasn't bought our book, you have to actually buy the book because there are all these exercises in there. So, it is very tactical of things that you walk people through. You explain a lot. It's easy to read. You put the key things in bold, for people with a little ADHD. It's like you
Yep.
actually make it pretty simple to follow. And you have all these key exercises. And I felt like I grabbed a pen and I was like, oh, let me do
Yeah, you
this.
write the book you needed, right? Like, that's what they say, and for
Yes.
me, like, there's so many great books out there, and some of them are really dense, and I as
Yeah.
in my the way that I think and the way that I approach things, like, it's hard for me to sit and read a book like that, so I
Yeah.
wanted it to have space, to breathe, to be pretty. I really
Yeah,
wanted it to
it's
be pretty.
beautiful. Oh my goodness, folks, it is
Yeah. Yeah,
beautiful.
and, my publisher did an incredible job with my requests and also kinda dealing with kind of what I, expected for it, and it is a gorgeous book in the sense of you're able to go through it, and someone said, I appreciate you saying that if you do like activities, because they said it's like a workshop in every chapter is what they said.
It is, and it's very, very well thought out. So before I move on, because I've so many questions, but one I want to talk about because you did such a good job of explaining this, and it piggybacks off what you just said about finding the time to really think.
Mhm.
So you have an exercise in there about understanding your why.
Mm.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, because I had no clue what mine was at that point. So you can honestly kind of like tap into what was Lee going through if you read these chapter by chapter. And if you've been burnt out, I bet you're like, oh yeah, that's me too. Or I felt that way, and you feel less alone. I think when you read the book too, if you've ever kind of been in those spaces and places. But I had not really thought about what I could be or what I wanted to do for a really long time. I feel like I didn't know what my purpose was. And people will say, "What's your purpose?" That's a that's a big heavy question, and it isn't one
Yeah.
usually you just rail off unless
Yeah.
you've kind of aligned and you're in a great place, and there is a percentage of the population that probably can answer that pretty quickly, but I didn't know who I was. So I really wanted to understand, what is my why? Why am I doing this? Why do I like healthcare? Why do I like solving problems that scare other people? That was for me something I didn't mind, running into the burning building, but I wanted to know that we were never going to have a fire again. And I was going to make sure that that happened. Right. So I think,
Yes.
from that perspective, your why is really your compass. And I needed to sit down and figure that out. So in the book, you kind of go through the pieces and parts to what makes up your why, and then understanding for yourself, maybe your why when you were 30 isn't the same as 40, certainly is not the same as 50, and just taking some space to actually sit down and think about it. Because ultimately, if you don't know that and you're just going through the motions, you're ultimately not really fulfilling your purpose. And I just needed to check myself in the sense of that, because I wasn't really sure. Was I supposed to be doing something different, or was I supposed to use everything that I've done to this point to do something new or to go back? I really was like that person standing in front of, like, the fork in the road that had like 10
Totally.
forks. Yeah, and I
Yep.
just wasn't sure. And
Yeah.
no one could tell me the answer. I had to
Of
figure it
course
out
not.
for me.
Comes from within. You
Yeah.
have to find it within yourself.
100%. But we look for answers from other people sometimes, especially when we're like, wow, this is really important. I don't want to get it wrong, right? And I think that's where we also go back to, I think, the belief in ourselves and how we should start there. Like, if you don't think you can figure it out, why do you think that? you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And, you have a runway. Well, I know I can do that. It's short, but, doesn't mean I can't achieve it. And I think just really digging into, like, how are you talking to yourself? Because I know that I had to, retrain myself how I spoke to myself.
Yes, very much so. Well, and something that I loved about your why exercise is it when I first read it, I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." And then you have some examples, and then I really thought about it, and I was like, "What's so interesting about that is when you think about children," and we both have daughters, and I
Mhm,
was like, "When they're like 2.5, everything is why.
mhm.
Why?" why? And you give an answer and then they're like, but why? And then you give another answer, but why? And so your exercise is actually so fascinating because it forced me to sit down and really think like deeper and
Yeah,
deeper
and
and
this gives you,
deeper.
and this gives you, and this gives like, why?
Right. And it's like,
It's
okay,
the
wait,
adult
really,
version of that.
right. Like really why, like really why? Why are you fearful? And so
Mm.
it was so thank you for that. It was
Yeah,
a really great exercise and it also taps into curiosity, right?
mhm.
Like be curious about these new things and that's part of the learning and the continual learning that you talk about a lot. Like be curious, be interested, open yourself up.
Yeah, that's another thing I think when we're younger, we do that all the time. We ask why, and we're curious about just about everything.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, it gets knocked out of us or dimmed or muted, or maybe all three. And you're not supposed to ask why. You're just supposed to do what I said and, or how told you to do it. Just don't even ask. And then curiosity is like, for your off time. It's not like to be, during work hours, and then I'm being like harsh and, a little bit like black or white. But what I mean by that is like we seem to do less and less of that as we get older. And I seriously was craving that. I was seriously craving creativity, curiosity, just doing the stuff people aren't expecting of you, coloring outside the lines, all of that. Like whatever I wanted to do, like I just wanted to figure that out. And if it meant those things, okay. Because I hadn't done that in a very long time. And it felt very foreign, I'll just say, to start off. To just be able to sleep was something new.
Yeah.
As silly as that sounds, because like, towards the end, I was sleeping, like, just 2 hours a
Yeah.
night,
Oh, which is
and
terrible. That doesn't
insane.
work.
No, it's
Yeah.
terrible,
No,
it's terrible. So,
doesn't
like,
work.
silly things like that sound things that sound silly are really, really important. How you eat, how you move, how you think about yourself. Like, I had to get those in shape before I could
Yeah.
even think about jumping back into work.
Yeah. And then you start to become someone different.
Yeah, I
And
it
you
was
talked about that. You start
yeah,
to like grow and become someone different. And
mm,
then all of a sudden, at least, and I'm sure this happened to you because you just mentioned it also, you look around and you're like, the people that are around me, they're not understanding the
yeah,
different me, but yet you're starting to feel more grounded within yourself because you're
yeah,
doing the work. And like your confidence starts to build because you feel like, no, no, that feels good. Like this feels good. And
right.
other people are looking at you like,
Who are
no,
you?
because they're still running that rat race. They're still doing it differently than you are.
Yeah, or they think because you left, you don't know the same thing that you knew when you had a particular title or were
Yes.
employed by a
Yes.
certain place. And
Yes.
at first, like I said, I think it was very hurtful because I was like, I'm the same person. Just because I have my own thing going on doesn't mean I'm any
Yes.
less qualified. And I think that, like the prove yourself kind of stuff, I had to be very careful that I wasn't getting back into that because I think that was
Mhm.
part of my understanding of myself was that I was really driven by, "I'm not enough. I gotta do more. I gotta add it in. I gotta do 190%, not 110, that's low."
Yeah.
Like and it's mathematically impossible too for everyone out there that
It
doesn't
is.
do it. But, like, I was driven by that, and I didn't know that until probably, 2 years into even being an entrepreneur. I mean, I was beginning to figure it out because I was making space to figure it out, but because of that, I think I had really driven myself to the place I was at in burnout. And so, why did I think I wasn't enough? Where did that come from? And, I believe in therapy, I believe in coaching, and, one of the things that is a predominant piece of that for me that I figured out just last year, honestly, at 52, was that when my brother passed away, he was 11 and I was 6, and our it was an accident, unexpected. Both would be bad, but I mean, it was totally just out of left field. And you're 6 years old in first grade, and your brother dies, and I saw how hurt my parents were, and I saw how sad they were, and I was like, "I'm never gonna make make them cry. I'm always gonna be the person that makes them happy." And so I
The good
just
girl.
mentally just went into that at 6, and I think I've carried that thread my entire
Yeah.
life into just about everything. No one's gonna be unhappy. I'm gonna try and keep everybody safe. I'm gonna try to keep the bad things from happening, and, that wears you out, and it's impossible to do most likely. At least for me, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's your story. That's the
yeah,
story that you're putting everything up to. That's the mirror, is that story you've been telling yourself ever since you were 6
yeah,
and learning that that is the story. And learning how to rewrite that story as
Right.
well is part of your journey.
Yeah.
So I have a question. L, learning. I am always so curious. What do people like yourself, how do you keep continually learning?
I enjoy really soaking stuff up. So I read a lot. So we were talking in the green room a little bit at the beginning about books, and I was like, "Oh, how do I pick one?"
Yeah.
In that sense, but I read a lot. I try to be around people who will stretch me. So,
Mm,
you don't want to be in places. I don't want to be in the room where I'm the smartest person in the room. I want to be the person that probably knows the least at times.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes. I love
and
it.
yeah, and that's scary, and I think in the sense of like, "Ooh, someone's gonna know I don't know everything." Well, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I do. So whether that's in conferences or just even, like, connecting with people through my podcast is an incredible way to meet people that I probably never would have been able to speak to or have connections to like you and other
Yeah.
people. So
It's so good.
you really do stretch yourself by the people you're around, and, they say, "What? You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." It's true.
Mhm.
And so
Totally
really
true.
yeah, do your inventory about who am I spending time with and think about does that a good ratio of how I wanna, be and what I wanna be. And I think the other thing that I do is and this is I think at times you gotta remind yourself, even as an entrepreneur, is taking time off and taking space to think. And what I mean by that is not having a plan, not having an agenda, not having a to-do list. And on days I'm really, really bad at that. Even recently, like it was our anniversary, our 29th wedding anniversary, and I was, like, trying to plan out the entire day. "Oh, we'll go to
Yeah.
a cooking class, and then we'll go to a baseball game, and then I just wanna show you how much I love you, and we'll do all these things, and we'll learn to sail," and this was, like, one day. And then I was
I'm
getting
exhausted.
right? I was getting worn out just planning it, and I was like, "He doesn't really need all that. He doesn't really want all that. He just wants to hang out."
He
And
just
so,
wants to
like
spend time with you.
yeah, so what did we do? We went to dinner and we walked around. We walked 10 miles in one day. So, like, that's an example of something that's probably approachable for people, but, like, you don't have to have it all figured out, and I think that's the thing that's most important for me now is just having some space and understanding my vision for where I wanna be and how I wanna get there. If you don't have a vision, meaning what are my goals? How am I setting myself up for success? And you may need to, tune that. I try
Yeah.
to do that quarterly. It's not something that, whatever my goal was in January, it may change by March or April. That doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm a failure. It means I'm paying attention to kind of, the market of my life in a way. If you think of the stock market, it
Yeah.
changes daily. And there's some things
It
you're
does.
never going to do just because of the change, meaning, oh, it went up or down. Oh, I'm not gonna sell today, right? I'm gonna stay
Yeah.
steady. Your
Yeah.
life is like that too with your goals. Oh, I'm not gonna change my goal. But then there are times that you need to. Like maybe something you started isn't doing as well as you thought. You have all the data that says you should probably stop doing it. Well, you should probably stop doing it.
Stop doing it then.
So those are the types of things. Because I think sometimes we have a goal and we think, "Oh, if I change my goal or if I make it lower, that means I've failed." At least in my
Failed.
mind, I don't know if that ever plays for
Total. Oh,
you.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you changed the goal. It means I failed. Like
Yeah. Uh,
you moved the pin, so
yeah. A
therefore
big
you've
X,
failed.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
yeah, so, like, the scorecard for myself, I needed to really retune that or change it in the sense of, it is okay to change it as long as it makes sense for what you want to accomplish.
Yeah. And did you find, because I did this just recently, just this year, I redefined success for
Mm.
myself.
Oh, for
And
sure.
I found because coming from corporate America, success was so bound by numbers and metrics and SMART goals.
Mhm.
And so I
APIs and
I exactly
OKRs
I
and
learned
yeah,
just this year, it took me just this year, it took me 5 years, how to change how I view success and incorporate some of success around new people that I meet, new
yeah,
things that I learn, and sort of developing benchmarks for myself that are more than just the metrics of running a successful business as an entrepreneur. Did you
yeah.
do something similar? Because I found it was like an aha moment. And I was like, why did it take me so long to figure that out?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're trained that way, right? Even from grad school, like I've talked about when you're in healthcare administration, which is like you get your MBA in healthcare, you even dress up in a suit for school. And I didn't
Oh,
even
wow.
know that.
That's crazy.
I turned up the first day in a hoodie and jeans, and I may even had a rip in my jeans, I don't know. And everyone was in a two-piece suit, and we didn't have a lot of money. I was a young mom. I was, grad school. And I was like, how am I going to buy a suit? Like, I don't, I think they're expensive. And so
Right.
it was just kind of like it's ingrained in you, like how you're going to operate and what you're going to do. And I kind of get it, but I do feel like you get into a place or space in any organization that you work and you start to assimilate, right? You start to fit in, which, you don't always want to stand out, I guess, but you want to be you. So whatever that is, that's what you should be. But there is some sense of assimilation that has to happen within organizations. And sometimes we assimilate too far back and we lose who we are, right? And I think success to me was always my title and was what I got paid. And for me, that meant I could take care of my family ultimately. And that's what it was all about. And it's not what it's all about.
It's not.
Like to me, success now is like, did I get outside? Am I walking? Am I,
Yeah,
playing with the dogs? Am I, having conversations with my family? Because those were things that I couldn't do before. I wasn't doing like I should. Then, believe it or not, those are success metrics for me now. And
totally.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's a whole different definition. In maybe 2 or 3 years, I'll redefine it. I bet I will.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
I think it should change. It isn't just one definition. It's not one dimension because you're not one dimensional.
Right. No, it shifts as you
Yeah.
grow.
Yeah.
So you are an author and you have a second book coming out. Can we talk about
Yes.
your second book for a little bit just to give a
Yeah.
plug to that? What's your second book about?
Yeah. So believe it or not, second book in 2 years, 2 years, two books. It's
It's
coming out
crazy,
on
by
the
the way.
same day. Yeah. I've been in book. I think that's a little crazy too. So I don't recommend that. But I'm like, "Hey, why not?" Yes, because it was just an opportunity that came to me from Wiley and had the opportunity to take the bold framework really to the next level for organizations and leaders. And since I had been doing the consulting, really being able to talk about my model. But why I wanted to write this particular book was because I couldn't understand from a perspective of what keeps people from taking that bold move, that first step, which is the hardest step for people. What
Yeah.
keeps them from that space? And a lot of the times, it's fear. So I wanted to understand the neuroscience around making bold
Uh,
decisions. So it's really about your decision making process, and then really understanding and counting the things that measure boldness. These are new metrics for your dashboard versus kind of some of the ones we always see. But how many risks has your team taken? How many times have you had to retool or reset or do something new within your team or within your organization because of a change. And I think those are just two like little examples of things that we can measure. So the new book really is around, taking the model, the bold framework, and then really how do you use that, in organizations? Like what are the beliefs of our organization? What is my team owning
ooh,
that they
yeah.
shouldn't?
Yeah.
Who's not owning what
Yeah.
they should? Those types of things. How are we applying what we learned? Because I also find, at least in healthcare, and I bet this happens in other organizations, is that our dysfunction is cyclical, meaning that
Mm.
we fix a problem 100 times the same way, you know?
They're
And
that learning, they're missing the L of the learning.
right? And there was like, a leadership change or a change in the budget or maybe a new regulation. And then we seem to kind of, do the, run around the fire drill. And I really can't stand that. And for me, it was just trying to understand, how do we not do that? How do we really,
Yeah.
maintain and understand what we're learning and not solve the same problem 100 times. So that was a big part of it too. But it's really for me, the evolution of the framework and seeing it pulled into this was very exciting.
Yeah.
Writing for 2 years and I'm working on my dissertation, another level for me.
That's another
And so
level.
I'm
That's
excited to
crazy.
have, yeah, the book come out. We're kind of in those final phases and excited. It's out there for pre order now if you'd want to get it. The Bold Leader.
The bold leader, we're gonna link it in all the show notes. I love it. All right. So I have two more questions for you, with three actually. Since we're on a podcast, I want you to talk about your podcast because you also have a podcast, and it's a great way for other people to tap in and listen to something else. So, what made you start a podcast, and tell everybody what your podcast is about?
The podcast, again, like, wasn't something I thought I would ever be doing, had no idea how to do it or even, where to begin. So we just celebrated our 3rd year and
Congratulations.
super excited about that. And a lot of the technical pieces, again, my daughter, she learned. She's an incredible learner, and she has a team as well. The podcast really came about when I was coaching and started to coach people because organizations, as I was doing the consulting, asked me to coach the leaders on the plan that we had and coach really around some of the factors of being bold. Because
Yes.
I think there's some myths around, being bold that people don't realize that you will have self doubt. You won't always feel confidence, those types of things.
You're still human,
You're
folks.
still a
It's
human being.
not
Yeah.
just being like a dive-in risk taker. It's way more
Yeah,
than that.
just because you're bold, right? And so I think, that was just really important, but they were being bold and they didn't even know it. And I think that's really true because I never went into a room like, "Oh, I'm bold. I'm a this, I'm a that." No, I was just like living my life, like trying to stay above water, those types of things. I wasn't like waking up and going, "I'm bold." And so I think what was really important was for me to highlight people who are or are doing things that help people be bold or understand failure or change or those types of things. So the podcast really is, kind of runs the continuum of quiet moments of bold up to the bigger, larger, moments of bold. It could be an athlete, it could be an author, it could be everyday you and me. And, they're doing things that I never could think I could, whether it's, surviving cancer or creating something for, my child who passed away so that, that never happens again. I mean, these are the types of things that, "Oh, I'm not bold." I'm like, "Okay, let's talk about that." So I think the Bold Lounge really was something that was born out really just wanting to amplify other people's bold moves that help people see themselves in others, meaning it's okay to not know or it's okay to figure it out or look what she did. She made it through and I'm not by myself and I have someone to look toward that, really has done the things that I've done. So it's really meant to just hopefully inspire and help people see that being bold comes in all, shapes
Yeah.
and sizes.
Yes. And you have lots of quotes in your book from people who've been on your podcast, and
Yeah.
they are
Some
so
incredible
inspired.
guests.
Oh,
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Just so inspiring and just some incredible words of wisdom and an amazing quantity of words of wisdom as
Mhm.
well from your guests. So I encourage everybody go check out the podcast. We'll link it in the show notes also.
Well, thank you.
So you do a lot of things, and I just personally am curious. You do so many things, right? Coaching, consulting, podcasts, you write, all these things. Do you have a favorite?
I think I really enjoy the podcast. I have I always say this to the team. I have the easy part. You know? You don't see me editing or doing anything like that because I know I could not achieve
Right.
that in a reasonable amount of time, especially with how much I lose attention to detail in the sense of, like, that monotonous task. But I
Yes,
think,
right.
I have the easy part of talking with people, but it's just who I meet and the conversations we have, and it's just at a deeper level. I really, really enjoy that. The other thing that I enjoy probably, and it's a newer thing that I do, is, just having quality time with groups of people. So the mastermind is something that I do now. It's 6 months long. I really feel like you have opportunity to get to know each other and those types of things. And I really enjoy writing. Like I think I want to take a little break after this one, just
Right.
but a little breather, but I really, really enjoy that, and, I think that leads to so many things, like meeting new people and traveling and talking to people and speaking, and to me, that's what it's all about, is, like, just making a positive difference in the world, and I think through those things, I can do that really well.
Oh, you are so inspiring. I love it. All right, last question, which I ask all my guests,
Okay.
especially since you're an author, right?
Alright.
And we talked about this before. A huge proponent of books, and I love to have people recommend a book or multiple books that they think has a book that has really impacted them, either personally or professionally, that they would recommend that the listeners go and read.
Yeah.
So, what book or books would you like to recommend? And obviously, we will link all of yours in the show notes. But what would you like to recommend?
Yeah, I'm a big author, proponent as well, so I appreciate this question. So, the one that I looked at in my pile that is across from my desk is The Ambition Trap by Amina Altai. So,
Ooh.
it really takes ambition and redefines healthy ambition versus unhealthy ambition. And I think to me, it was eye-opening in the sense of kind of how I looked at that word, just like anyone could look at the word bold and it could get a bad rap. Ambition, I think, can get a bad rap too. But it was really how to understand ambition, then also how to apply it to your life. So, The Ambition Trap by Amina Altai would be the one I would pick.
I love it. You're the first guest in a while who recommended a book that I've never heard of. So
Okay, good.
thank you.
It's newer. So it's newer from May. So that's
I love that. And ironically, I was out to dinner the other night and had a whole debate with my girlfriend about the word ambitious.
yeah. Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, check it out.
which is very ironic
Yeah,
because
you should have her on your podcast.
she was putting it in a negative tone, and I was like, "What do you mean? No!" And so we had this
Yeah.
whole debate about the word ambitious. So
Yeah.
that's sort of the universe talking to me that I'm supposed to read that book. So thank
That's
you so
fun.
much.
Yeah.
All right, before we go, is there anything that I did not ask you that you want to make sure you communicate to the audience?
Yeah. I think the main thing is just start. Whether,
Mhm.
when you think about being bold, if that feels like a very overwhelming, idea, just start. Whether it's, buying the book or, going through the pieces of, how are you talking to yourself? Just some of the initial things that we talked about. And just realizing you don't have to have it all figured out. Don't let that keep you from who you want to be or how you want to be. Just take the first step. And I think that's sometimes, challenging for people even to understand what that is. And sometimes it's just even writing it down. And so start today, write your goals down or write where you want to be by the end of the year, and then start taking the steps towards it.
I love it. One step at a time. Oh, thank you so much, Leigh, for making the time. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to meet you. Your energy, your story is so inspiring. And I see so many similarities in my own life to you. And one of the gifts I think that we have of having a public platform is being able to inspire people with our
Mhm.
stories so they don't feel so alone. And your book does a great job of doing that. Getting the chance to talk to you has really helped me do that. So thank you so much for your time, and we will stay connected.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good luck with your book launch, too.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the House of Germar podcast, where wellness starts within. We appreciate you being a part of our community and hope you felt inspired and motivated by our guest. If you enjoyed this episode, please write us a review and share it with friends. Building our reach on YouTube and Apple Podcasts will help us get closer to our mission to empower 1 million women to live all in. You can also follow us on Instagram at House of Germar and sign up to be a part of our monthly inspiration newsletter through our website, houseofgermar.com. If you or someone you know would be a good guest on the show, please reach out to us at podcast@houseofgermar.com. This has been a House of Germar production with your host, Jean Collins. Thank you for joining our house.